Thank you, Joan. Good morning, everybody. First of all, a big thanks to David Woods for organising the conference and inviting me along. Yesterday evening was a bit of a return to reality for me because being let out in the open and catching up with old friends was really fantastic. I'd quite forgotten how hard permanent way people can drink after or even before an event. But it was great to catch up, and I look forward to reinforcing past relationships as well going forward. So thank you very much. Fortunate in having previous speakers, I've got a couple of hooks that I can use going forward. So from John, I think the hooks here about optimising train operations and about optimising programmes in general, very important. And even more important for the subject, what I'm going to speak about today is about data-driven. So the railway industry is, swamped with data, and the proposition is, what do we do with that data and how do we use it effectively? Joan introduced me with a brief bio and touched on the main events. I'll just embellish that, if I may, because the theme throughout my career is about improvement and about how the industry has changed around us in terms of complexity. So in the late 70s, if you can believe it, and the 80s and 90s, I worked for London Transport. I obviously started when I was in shorts, as a straight into the railway. I worked for a guy called Peter Coyston, who some of you will remember from this institution, late of this institution. I would describe Peter as probably the best mentor I ever had. Before mentors were kind of a way of developing people. I worked in tube track renewals, hammering out the tube track renewals in closures. By the time you mobilised the site at 1 o'clock in the morning, it was pretty much time to put it back together for traffic 4 hours later. And that went on and on for years. Probably the last thing I did in London Underground was to introduce private sector contractors for the first time. So track work was introduced along with what was then Grant Rail, and some Dutch contractors from Volker came along as well. So all of this evolving way that we've engineered the railway is hugely important. I was then tempted into the private sector because PPP was on the horizon for London Underground. I spent 2 years in the construction industry. Not a good experience, really. Collaboration and supply chain management was the proposition, but actually not paying contractors or subcontractors was how it turned out. So I quickly returned to the rail industry with Grant Rail, now Volker Rail, and then moved on to Thales and delivered moving block signalling to the Jubilee, Northern and Piccadilly lines, which was an experience in itself. Joined the big railway in 2011, did some sponsoring of modular signalling. Some of you may be familiar with signalling in a box and one size fits all, and then something about interoperability regulations and the application to the big railway, and then Anglia route enhancements, and then finally the Northern Powerhouse Rail, which coincided with my move from London to the north. I wasn't quite sure where Huddersfield and Manchester was when I moved up, but anyway, NPR programme is a fantastic programme to work on. My first experience of travelling from York, where I lived, to Manchester to come to meetings to meet with Tim and colleagues in TFN was a nightmare. Castlefield Corridor made me late for every meeting I came to in Manchester, pretty much. And I don't think much has changed today. It's still a nightmare. We've got to fix it. So looking forward to working with Tim and TFN colleagues on improving the railway in the north. Huge opportunity, and we mustn't let that opportunity pass. Just as an aside, I was elected as a fellow of the PWI as far back as 1991. Apologies, I haven't kept up my dues, but I have moved away from the permanent way fraternity. So at some point I might come back, who knows. So my presentation today is about why we must integrate 3 major investment programmes in the north of England. So Northern Powerhouse Rail, High Speed 2 and Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade that we've heard about previously from Neil. Touch on those three programs, the integration challenge, something about planning and why planning is so important, and it's more than just a P6 plan. The data to assist with the integration, we saw the lovely fly-throughs from Neil earlier on, an ambition to do similar kind of characterization of data that we will do on the NPR program as well. What are the consequences of not integrating these programs? They're huge, so I'll touch on that. And then, of course, no conference about North of England rail investment will be complete about a few words about the integrated rail plan that Tim has already referred to and has just smiled knowingly on the subject, and then some words of conclusion at the end. Some of you may remember these words from George Osborne, who was the Chancellor at the time, and coined the expression a northern powerhouse. So it now seems likely with the integrated rail plan just around the corner, hopefully, fingers crossed and all that stuff, that direction will be given about the Northern Powerhouse Rail Programme, both the scope and the programme of implementation. Also about HS2, Eastern Leg, and with the Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade Programme already underway, there is significant and ambitious investment around the corner in the north of England. The challenge will be that that investment is on a largely common footprint, and the investment will be delivered in broadly similar timescales. So while we may ask for this investment, now the industry has to step up on the way that this investment is integrated and delivered effectively. Integration has become a buzzword in Network Rail of late. I think many entities within the industry are all using the integration challenge, but I think it's not yet absolutely clear about how the investment is going to be integrated going forward. And of course, we have Great British Railways not far away, so perhaps the integration challenge will be picked up there as well. Northern Powerhouse Rail, there's going to be more detail coming in one of the papers this afternoon, and Tim has already given us an excellent overview of the programme. It is much more than an infrastructure project. This is about rejuvenating the north. It's about increasing the commercial and the business benefits in the economy as a whole, quality of life, all of these huge benefits to the north is just going to be fantastic. Absolutely fantastic for the north. The benefits that we derive from the Northern Powerhouse Rail will be great for the country as a whole. So it's not just about for the north, it's about connectivity between cities of the north and with a wider network. The programmes are already inextricably linked. As Tim said, we will be dependent on HS2 to deliver some NPR services. And we're already in discussion with the Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade about scope share, where this is economically viable and logistically makes sense. A kind of the principle of do it once rather than come back and then deliver some more investment in the same area. So those conversations are already happening. There's no doubt with the direction that the integrated rail plan will give, that will be the catalyst for a huge amount of integration activity to make sense of the government direction. And we need to address that pretty quickly. As soon as the plan is published, I think Transport for the North and the Department for Transport with Network Rail and HS2 will start to unpack what that messaging is and turn it into practical plans. And as we do so, we'll be working very closely with the Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade, but also with other programmes in the north as well. Manchester Task Force has already been mentioned. And also, of course, there's other enhancements and the renewals programmes of the Network Rail regions. All of this has to come together as a collective to be effective and also to prevent nugatory spend and a loss of direction across the industry. So there's a huge amount of integration work to come across the northern network. This image, and I hope it's clear, reasonably clear, depicts the preferred network for Northern Powerhouse Rail. As Tim has said, it's a wide footprint from Liverpool to Hull and from Sheffield to Newcastle. Current status of the programme, if we relate to grip stage or pay stage, is grip 2 broadly. And we still have a number of options on the table about how we can achieve journey time and capacity and performance between the major cities. We are anticipating the integrated rail plan to give direction on the preferred method for achieving performance. But we don't think it's going to be in the nuts and bolts of the details, so we will have to go away, I'm sure, and interpret that message in a language and in a detail that can allow us to progress the programme. We will be doing that with Transport for the North, who is my current client, and Transport for the North provides the remits that Network Rail then works to develop the programme and take it forward. Now, Neil has given a really great overview of TRU. I wish my presentation was as active as Neil's was. It's kind of a follow that situation. But the image on the screen is the end-to-end, if you like, composition of the TRU programme. Lots of individual projects which together produce the journey time benefits and the capacity benefits that Neil has already described. This, of course, is on the Manchester to Leeds and Leeds to York footprint. NPR equally has ambitions about building on what TRU leaves behind. So it's absolutely pivotal that we understand the TRU scope, because that scope becomes the NPR baseline upon which we then design and build further improvements. And then the missing ingredient from that is the when the benefits will be delivered. So Neil and I work very closely together. There is an increasingly strong bond between the programmes, and as soon as the rail plan lands, we will get together and we will make sure that our go-forward plans and scope are fully integrated. And then the third programme, HS2. I think it's fair to say that both TRU and HS2 have evolved over the years, changes in scope, changes in timescales, and this makes integration with any programme, never mind a programme the size of Northern Powerhouse Rail, very difficult. But now I think we're approaching the time when we do have that clarity between the programmes. So, as I said, the integrated rail plan, we hope, will give sufficient clarity for the interfaces between the programmes, the dependencies between the programmes to be clarified, and then we can start to build this cohesive programme going forward. It's still part of a much bigger picture, of course, because with enhancements the size of the programmes we're discussing, there is a lasting effect on both the maintenance tasks, of course, of the Network Rail regions, and the timetable impact rarely is constrained by the geographic boundary of the programme. It goes far beyond the programme in terms of its effect. So a huge integration task. Actually, this is something that system operator in Network Rail is set out to manage. It's system operator's role to manage capacity and capability across the network. So this is absolutely something that system operator is up for, and we're really proud to be involved delivering a service to Transport for the North. So the best way I could describe the integration challenge is a bit of a Rubik's Cube. It's certainly three-dimensional. Just when you think you've nailed all of the attributes of the programs that you're considering, something will move subtly, perhaps a scope change, perhaps a funding constraint, perhaps the delivery methodology, and it's keeping up with these various factors that's hugely important. Certainly with the Northern Powerhouse Rail programme, the baseline that we have taken for Trans-Pennine Route upgrade, and on which all of the engineering development over the past year, past 18 months has been carried out, is a true option that is now derelict, I would say. Things have moved on the TRU programme. But what we found is that you can't actually change engineering development halfway through and then move to another option. You have to continue the development through and then pick your time when you move to a different baseline from an adjacent programme. And one of the things we will do when we have sight of the integrated rail plan is to re-baseline our assumption of TRU to what we now understand is option F1, and then if government supports yet another option being developed on TRU, we will move to that baseline as well. So this is constantly moving picture that makes integration both very challenging, but also emphasises how important it is. Of course, one of the most important attributes to come out of any programme is the timetable that all of the improvements result in. System operator now carries the role, together with wider industry, of future-proofing the network from a railway timetable point of view. I think it's back in 2018, a disaster for the industry when the services just became intolerable, cannot be repeated. So very much when we transpose the objectives of Transport for the North and the Northern Powerhouse Rail programme into something that will ultimately deliver the benefits, we're talking about early timetable development. And it's very important that we phase that timetable development on the back of other investments which are taking part in the network. So TRU, for example, but also the myriad of other enhancements which are taking place. There are other considerations apart from engineering the solution and direct coordination with other programs. And one of the considerations that we will have to confront is that we will be fishing in the same supply pond as other programs. And we will need to make sure that the capacity of the supply chain is sufficient for all these programs investing at the same time. And in fact, Treasury will demand that we evidence that the programs are realistic and achievable. If ever there was a pressing case for programs to work more closely together, that would probably be one of the key ones from my perspective. And then there's the wider asset strategies from the Network Rail regions. We might struggle to make the case for ETCS, which is a consideration for the Northern Powerhouse Rail programme, if there's huge residual life left in the conventional signalling. But we know the asset strategy of Network Rail and the industry as a whole is about moving to digital railway and the ETCS solution. So we'll be challenging the business cases of making that technology shift during the programme, and we'll be working with the regions to make sure that we're aware of the asset policies and that we comply with them wherever feasible. And of course, if we do so, it will make our life a lot easier for us when we hand over to maintenance at the end of the programme, which can be a challenge, we know. So what are we doing about the integration challenge in practical terms? The first thing we're trying to do is to make sense of the broad landscape of investment. The programs that NPR is developing, the programs that TRU are following, and of course the programs that HS2 will develop are very complex. Believe it or not, we found there's a propensity not to share program data across programs. And why could that be? So I've been involved in some capital program delivery. I receive a scope and a budget from the client, and I receive an expectation date when that benefit is going to be released. And I'm head down, and I'm getting on with it, and I don't really want to know about what else is going on the railway. But that actually has a detrimental effect on the wider network. So while I can understand why there might be a propensity not to share data, there's an absolute requirement to do so going forward. So we must encourage that collaboration across programs. I think I could argue that collaboration starts with the clients, actually taking a more holistic view of the network and making sure that investment is more joined up before it gets to the point where programs go into delivery mode and where that focus is absolutely deserved. So from a very early stage in the NPR program, we have been producing some high-level plan alignment, I guess I would call it. That sounds a bit clunky, but actually what we're trying to do is to take a bigger picture than the NPR program to see where the NPR program fits into the wider investment program across the north of England. It's a very simple principle. At level 0 in the planning context, you have national plans. And here we've taken Digital Railway Implementation Plan, for example. We've taken all of the Rail Network Enhancement Plan programs that are likely to come to fruition. We've taken notional start and completion dates, and we've captured as much of that planning data as we can in a very simple tool that allows graphic depiction of those plans. And this is to give you a sense of perspective across the network about where that investment is going in. And then when you come down to the next level, the route level programs, an example here is the various Northern Powerhouse Rail work packages, WP1, Liverpool to Manchester, WP2, Manchester to Sheffield, and so on. We had the notional implementation dates for those corridors, and we can build up this picture of when NPR might be delivered. Now, I have to say at this point, it's all subject to IRP direction, but you have to start somewhere with this planning process. Pick up a point from Neil earlier on, you have to start somewhere. You can't keep waiting for a perfect solution. And then when it gets down to level 2, this is the individual projects, if you like, within programs. And you can start to build a picture that gives you the wide landscape of investment. And then you get some pointers about where you need to collaborate and where you can integrate with these programs. As I said, it's a fairly simple model, and it's a bit like joining the dots on the rail network, but it gives you the places where investment is planned and the control period, and this is just a snapshot on the screen from the long-term deployment plan for ETCS. This plan in itself is updated every year, so we need to keep on top of the updates and make sure that the information we have is current and useful. Similarly, for Power Supply Upgrade 2, and now we're getting into a common footprint of the Leeds to Newcastle Northern Powerhouse Rail investment, and in what control period this investment might take place. And now we are really building up a picture of where we need to think about overlapping programs, access to the railway, complementary scopes, and so forth. And again, more digital railway overlay, and looking at the broader picture of Midland Main Line and West Coast Main Line as well. So this is just a picture of an evolving, holistic planning tool that eventually will give us some, if you like, hotspots is how it's depicted, where there are areas of specific focus that we need to understand better, that we need to trap the detail on a refreshing basis to make sure that the data is credible. And it gives us a really powerful tool to then think about how we collaborate with programs, who we need to reach out to, who we need to influence, and it's always, of course, a two-way message. John opened today's proceedings with a word or two about data. And data is going to become hugely important to the NPR program and our collaboration with adjacent programs. I think the question is just how useful data can be in terms of decision making. The programs create a huge amount of data. There is this propensity not to share, so we need to break down barriers. We need to create a more sharing approach and a more collaborative approach. I think collaboration has been a theme in railway investment for many years, but this is about true collaboration and the tools that make that collaboration worthwhile. So many systems, before we started to initiate what I'm going to describe as a digital data platform for the Northern Powerhouse Rail programme, before we started that journey, we looked around the network to see if there are examples of things ready-made that we could use. We found dozens of examples of where individual programs had created tools for managing data, but they were very short-sighted. They generally last for the duration of the program and then were trashed. Also, they were designed to communicate, if you like, within the program, perhaps between project management and supply chain, but not out with the program. So there's a limit to how useful and how powerful they could be. So fast forward to today, Northern Powerhouse Rail is collaborating very closely with the Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade, who have a tool called the iModel Hub. And that iModel Hub is a digital data platform, and I won't describe the IT wizardry that goes into it. The premise is that it can make data more useful for decision making. It helps to visualize the data that we produce in railway programs, and you saw the fly-through that Neil used in his presentation is an output from this data management tool, if you like. Visually integrating programs is very powerful. A picture says 1,000 words, absolutely is true here, but also you can progress to a digital twin where you can visualize what you're going to implement on the railway before you've even finished the design almost. So there are huge benefits in efficiency, in value engineering, but also in safety management as well, where you actually have the opportunity to walk through a project before you build and before you implement on the railway. This is the, it's called a collaboration platform or digital platform I've referred to, the plan that we are now progressing. As I said, it's between Northern Powerhouse Rail, Trans-Pennine Route Upgrade and HS2. The relationship is between system operator at the moment and the DFT, and the initiative that the Department for Transport is running is referred to as the Transport Infrastructure Efficiency Strategy. This is all about making better use of data in construction and the railway industries. We are closely working with the TRU digital and data team, so we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, very much mimicking the work that TRU has done today. And it will bring together the entities that I've referred to, NPR and TFN, HS2 Limited and TRU. Also, we're in early discussions with the Network Rail Renews and Enhancements teams in Eastern and Northwestern Central. There is a risk if we try and do too much at once that we will fail, but initially bringing the three programs together is the ambition. And the proposed principles, I'm not going to read them all through, but if you just scan through here, wouldn't it be great to have one version of the truth from three separate programs, to hand without having to request it? That's the ambition. Value will be released at every stage of the implementation. I have a timeline of what we're going to introduce on the next slide, but there will be benefits across the program. Open data standards is going to be absolutely worth its weight in gold as we look at value engineering the product, making sure that the investment is fit for purpose and delivers the outputs between the three programs. That's going to be hugely beneficial. And coming back to the basic, promote early sharing of information is going to be key. There have been examples when we have shared information across the programs, Sometimes the recipient receives it and doesn't know it's arrived, doesn't know where it's from. It's so clunky and old-fashioned, it's unbelievable. But here we are going to share data across the programs, and it's going to be timely and it's going to be credible data. So the journey we're starting, we're just at the mobilisation stage, so we have a long journey to go. The eventual outcome of a digital twin, you'll see here 5 to 10 years, which I'm not very happy about, so we're definitely going to beat that. But I think this is just the reality of the gestation period for some of these systems. So we have to do better than that, and there will be a challenge across the programs to improve there. The first stage of visual integration is about depicting the outcome from the integrated rail plan across the 3 programs. So the 3 programs can be seen as a collective. So that's one of the early benefits we will get from this system. And eventually to connected data and so forth, but the digital twin is the big objective, being able to visualize the program and all of the constituent parts on the journey to delivery. In a way, I would say we cannot afford not to integrate. We have to integrate these programs. We have to integrate the wider railway investment program anyway. But for these 3 programs, it's an absolute. They are so key to the north of England. They're so key to the wider network that we cannot afford not to integrate. If we do not, the investment will be suboptimal. And benefit plans realised will be potentially disjointed. Some benefit plans may be compromised. And worse still, the benefits from one programme might make benefit realisation from other programmes impossible to realise. There was a term about configuration state management for railway investment, which is absolutely key, keeping track of the various programmes as they implement in stages. And depicting those configuration states is going to be crucial for NPR, particularly as we will be building on other programmes of work and alongside other programmes of work. Changes to the rail network, we all know, are complex and require detailed long-term planning. The aggregate of investment, and holistic view of the railway is a requirement, and integration is at the heart of that requirement. There is another issue that must be dealt with through integration, and that's the potential for one programme to deliver benefit only for another programme to come along and unwind that benefit. And we must guard against that. This is a particular risk when investment is focused over the same geography and to the same timescales, such as that's coming to the north of England. And finally, there is the reputation of the railway to consider. When projects go wrong, typically it hits the headlines. The bad news relating to anything from overspend to extended programmes of work. Not all of the reasons for these failings extend to the lack of integration, but many do, and we must guard against that. So in a post-IRP world, it looks like we're heading for this broad programme, 3 programmes delivering in the same timescales. And having just been given the red card, I'm going to move through this pretty quickly. So these are the issues that we need to address. The use of diversionary routes. We have to put passengers first. That's the mantra of the industry. The capacity of the supply chain to support these programs, and compatibility between systems and requirements. And bringing that all together with a cohesive plan for industry systems integration. We touched on the integrated rail plan. I'm going to skip over this. The headlines from the integrated rail plan remit are very supportive. It's about integration, It's about deliverability considerations, supply chain capability, and so forth. The challenge of integration is definitely recognised, and now the industry will step up to deliver that challenge. And in conclusion, all programmes need to be integrated in order that there is a holistic view. Particularly for investment in the north of England, the stakes are raised because of the value of the programmes and the fact that they're being delivered across the same footprint. Programmes have not been good at collaborating, and we must break down those barriers, and that collaboration is going to be absolutely critical. But in collaborating, we have to have tools and techniques that can be used which make the collaboration more effective. Hopefully, some of the tools I've described will be used in that challenge. And I think we're certainly aware of the risks and the consequences of not successfully integrating. They are huge financially, and of course, the reputation of the railway is at stake. Thank you very much. Thanks.